Hello and welcome to Tech Deals and the Intel i7-9700KF PC build guide. If you are interested in 1080p, 1440p, or perhaps 4K gaming at 144 plus frames per second, if you want a pure gaming machine, none of that content creation and live streaming stuff, you want something with maximum frame rates at a reasonable value, then you've come to the right place. This is part one of a three-part video guide on this $2,000 premium PC build. This is, as I said in the intro, geared for gaming performance. Yes, you can do content creation and live streaming on it to a point, but that's not the focus. Maximum gaming performance for the money with a nice premium experience is the goal. Now, this is not top of the line. You can, of course, absolutely spend more money. The i9-9900K, yes, we'll get there and talk about that. However, you can $100 yourself to $3,000 if you're not very careful. So this provides amazing performance and a great build quality without breaking the bank. Part 2 of this video series will be the detailed build itself. The camera will be overhead and we'll go step by step through the build process, including some of the challenges and even mistakes that occur during the build process. We live streamed this build, and if you've seen it already, well, then you know what to expect. But that live stream was 4 hours long, and I'm willing to bet that most people don't want to watch a 4-hour long build video, so we're going to condense that down just to the part of installing all the components and make it much more watchable. Part 3 will be the performance testing, where we actually benchmark it. We do power, temp, noise, and of course performance testing. How well does this hardware actually play games? How many frames per second can we get at some different resolutions? If you are not subscribed to the channel, that's what the subscribe and the bell notification icon are for, to be notified when those videos come out. But in this video, it's all about the parts overview. We're going to go through all of these components and parts and talk about what benefit they provide and what you could do to increase or decrease the budget. Should you, for example, get the i9-9900K? How much RAM should you have? How much storage? Is it worth spending more or less on your video card? We're going to talk about that step by step in today's video. Thank you very much to Gigabyte for sponsoring this video. Without their support, these would be much harder to do. They provided the RAM, the motherboard, and the video card. However, they did not have a say in the editorial content of this video, and they did not get a preview of it before it published. So everything I have to say here is my own opinion. Links to all the products in today's video, as well as some of the suggested alternatives, will be down in the video description below. Those links are to Amazon, Newegg, and eBay. They are affiliate links. Using them supports the channel at no extra cost to you. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, please consider using those when shopping. It's greatly appreciated. Whenever we do these build guide video series, inevitably somebody goes down to the comment section and says, I'd pick a different case, or I wouldn't use that cooler, or I prefer XYZ brand of SSD. Great. Custom PCs are custom. Build it your way. Want a different case? Want a different SSD? Want a different cooler? No problem. That's the whole point of a custom PC. Consider this to be a starting build guide if you're looking at building a premium Intel-based system. Maybe you stick with the i7, maybe you get the i9-9900K, maybe you prefer MSI, Asus, or ASRock as opposed to Gigabyte. Not a problem, they all make very nice motherboards. Those are personal choices based upon your brand preferences. But within any given price category, generally you get what you pay for. So swap the parts out. But a $2,000 Intel build is generally going to be a very premium experience with amazing performance and tons of future in front of it. Now it's time to go through all the components step by step and discuss their pros and cons and what you can upgrade to or maybe downgrade to, depending upon how you want to move the pieces around on this particular chessboard. You'll already notice we've got the first piece of the puzzle on the desk right now. Now this build at $2,000 is being done with the i7-9700KF, 8 cores, 8 threads, turbos up to 4.9 gigahertz. It's a very nice CPU, and you can pick it up for just over $300 these days. It's starting to get pretty reasonably priced. However, you may very well notice the i9-9900K on the desk. To be completely blunt, if it were my money and I was spending $2,000 on a computer, it would have an i9 in it. But that's not what we're building today. So if you've got the extra $160-ish that it costs to go to the i9, by all means, you'll get 8 cores and 16 threads. It's hyper-threaded, whereas the i7-9700KF is not. And the i9-9900K has Intel integrated graphics built into it, which the F does not. That's what the F at the end of KF means. Now, you can also buy an i7-9700K without the F, and then you get the Intel integrated graphics. Who cares, you say? Who in the world's building this and remotely cares about Intel integrated graphics? Well, you can use those for quick sync video transcoding and even live streaming. Especially with the i9, you can use your video card for playing the game, and you can use the Intel integrated graphics to live stream to Twitch or Mixer and put zero load on your main video card. Just turn on the integrated graphics in the BIOS, which all the major motherboards support, and then you can run both quick sync on the CPU and your video card if you want to live stream. However, if you don't give two hoots about live streaming, then you don't need Intel's Quick Sync, and then the F processor, especially if it saves you money, makes a lot of sense. Now, when I go down to the i5-9600K, at this price point, not on your life. I didn't even bother putting the processor on the desk. That's just a big fat no deal. It's cheaper. Currently, it's really close to $200, and it's 6 cores and 6 threads. But if you've got $2,000, I hope you're not building a 6-core machine at the end of 2019. Regardless of which CPU choice you make, you're going to need a cooler, because neither the i7 nor the i9 include one, and frankly, if Intel gave you one, you'd want to replace it anyway. You're generally going to be looking for either a top-of-the-line air tower cooler or a top-of-the-line liquid cooler, and I have 2 good examples of those right here. The Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4 at about $90 absolutely fits the bill and will run either of those CPUs at 5 gigahertz on all the cores and threads. On the other hand, do you want all the RGB? Do you want to maybe push beyond 5 gigahertz or run at lower ambient temperatures for longer life, or run in a hotter environment, maybe with a little bit less airflow? Take a look at the Gigabyte Aorus 360mm all the RGB liquid cooler. It is more expensive. You're looking at something in the $150 plus range for a good 360 versus $90-ish for a good tower cooler. However, if you don't want a really cramped install, watch part 2 of this video to see how that installs in there. If you want more space around your motherboard, space for your video card, space for your RAM, the benefit to a liquid cooler is you mount the radiator on the top or the front, and then you just have the pump itself on the CPU, freeing up the installation. And of course, RGB out just everything. There's more RGB on this than you can shake a stick at. On the other hand, not everybody wants to put liquid in their computer, and that's fine because, well, this exists. So either one of these is a reasonable option for either of those Intel CPUs. What is not a reasonable option is to go substantially below either of these choices. Can you use a 240mm liquid cooler? You can, but you may have problems running at 5 gigahertz. I have tried that. I have a 240mm liquid cooler on the previous generation i7-9700K, and it'll do 5 gigahertz, but it's really hot. I don't recommend it. 360 is ideal for 5 gigahertz on especially 8 cores and 16 threads. Now, as far as the Noctua NH-D15 or the Be Quiet, they're fine, but if you go below those, if you go to the $50 air tower cooler range, you start to lose direct contact heat pipes, you lose fins, you often lose the second fan. It's possible and doable, but let me ask you this question. Is it worth saving $30 in your $2,000 build to potentially have heat and overtemp issues? I say no. So spend the $90 or spend the $150 and build your system right. Your CPU needs a motherboard, and in this case, we've gone with a mid-range model, the Gigabyte Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, $170. It's got a lot of features for the money, and it's a relatively good value, all things considered. If you're going with a $300-ish i7-9700K or KF, then that's about where you want to be. $200 would be the absolute most you'd want to spend on a motherboard. Now you'll notice that the Gigabyte Aorus Master is on top. 6 months ago, I built an i9-9900K with a $3,000 budget, the Cadillac Platinum build, and I used that premium board, but that's closer to $300. It makes sense for a $500 CPU, but it doesn't make sense for a $300-ish CPU. So if you want to go that way, you can spend more money. But the $170 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi actually has it where it really counts, and that's power delivery. 12+1 digital power delivery on the VRMs. That's plenty for all the overclocking you could ever want to do on this motherboard. 2 M.2 slots, lots of RGB, plenty of USB ports. Frankly, even for the i9, it's not a bad choice if you're looking to save money but still get hyperthreading. That leads us to our system memory, and in terms of capacity of memory, there's really only one choice: 32 gigabytes of RAM. 16 is not even an option. If you're spending $2,000 on your system, going from 32 gigs to 16 gigs saves you about 2% of the total system price. However, games are already starting to use up to 16 gigs of RAM with Windows, of course. Even games that are a year old like The Division 2 will use 11 to 12 gigabytes of system RAM with nothing running in the background. I mean, completely clean system. I'm seeing several other games in that 10 to 12 gigabyte range now. You could kind of get away with it, but seriously, that's not the place to save money here. 64 gigabytes is not necessary for a gaming PC and won't for the foreseeable future. If 24 were reasonable, we'd do 24, but it's not, so we're doing 32. Now, if you do an i9-9900K and content creation and live streaming of anything with lots of programs open is important to you, maybe 64 gigs isn't crazy. It's only another $120, which is about 5% of the total system build, and it might be something to consider. But for like 98% of you watching this video, it's 32 gigabytes or bust. Now let's talk about RAM speed. We have 32 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz CL16 in here. You can buy faster RAM, and it's not much more expensive, but it isn't much faster, despite the fact that the number looks more impressive. DDR4 3200 CL16 in the real world is very, very close in performance to DDR4 3600 CL19. Now at the moment, it's only about $10 or $15 more to get 3600 CL19 over 3200 CL16. And if that all sounds confusing, just buy the 3200 and don't worry about it. But you can buy the 3600 if you want. It doesn't really make a real world difference. I've tested this, I've done a video on it, and they're pretty close. You can buy DDR4 4000, and 4000 CL19 can be quite impressive in certain benchmarks when you're looking for it. It doesn't make that big of a real world difference, and you will spend a pretty premium trying to get up to that 4000 memory speed. Save your money. There's a lot of other places to put it. In a $2,000 build, honestly, 3200 or 3600 is where it's at. If we're going to be playing games, we need a graphics card. And in this $2,000 build, we have a very nice one. Gigabyte's Gaming Overclocked RTX 2070 Super. It is a very nice card for 1440p gaming. It will play any game on the market today at 1440p. Now, it will not play every game at 1440p at 144 frames per second, but it will play the games where it matters. Rainbow Six Siege, Fortnite, Overwatch, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Battlefield 5. It will play those games at high detail at 144-ish frames per second, some 200 plus, some up to 144, but it will absolutely do that at 1440p. It will not play Ghost Recon Breakpoint at 1440p at 144 frames per second. Frankly, an RTX 2080 Ti won't do that. So keep in mind that it does have its limitations, but you don't need to play Ghost Recon Breakpoint at 144 frames per second. It's not that sort of game, whereas Battlefield 5 is, but it will do Battlefield 5 at those high frame rates. At 1080p, it's much more capable of 144 frames per second across the board, and it's an option to consider. The Intel CPU provides all the horsepower needed to drive those frames to the graphics card, and that's certainly a benefit. Now, the inevitable question is going to come up: why not an RTX 2060 Super or why not a 2080 Super? The 2060 Super in a $2,000 build just doesn't belong in my opinion. It saves you $100, it cuts back on your performance. You can, but if you're trying to save money like that and say it's really only $100 difference, then you're probably cutting other things back in your build, and maybe you're building a $1,500 machine instead of a $2,000 machine. As far as the RTX 2080 Super, it's a lot more money for a relatively small additional boost in performance, and frankly, we're probably 6 months away from when I'm filming this video in December of 2019 from the 30 series. Don't spend $700 or $800 on a video card at this point in the current gen. Had you done so a year ago, that would have made more sense. But this is kind of the top level price to performance you can go before the numbers just get absolutely crazy. And of course, there's the RTX 2080 Ti. Well, if you have all the money in the world, rock on, do that. I put a 2080 Ti in my $3,000 Cadillac Platinum build, but that's a lot of money in rarefied air. The next question somebody's going to ask is, why not an RX 5700 XT? Those are $400, and aren't they almost as fast as this? Yeah, kinda, sorta, sometimes it depends. Even in December of 2019, even with the newest Adrenalin 2020 drivers, AMD's Navi drivers for the RX 5700 XT are no equal of NVIDIA's. Now, NVIDIA in the past has had its issues with drivers, and I understand that, but that's then, not now. Right now in 2019, NVIDIA's drivers are cleaner and better and work across the board in more games than AMD's newest drivers do. AMD's fine wine technology will fix them over time. After all, this happened with the RX 480 and 580. Those were a little bit rough at launch, but they smoothed out. And right now, I would absolutely use an RX 580 in a machine. The drivers are mature, the cards are very mature, everything works very nicely on those. They haven't gotten there yet on Navi. So saving $100 or 5% to get a video card with almost as good a performance and troubled drivers that might take 3 months, 6 months, or a year to work out is no deal, in my opinion. So for this budget, it's RTX 2070 Super. Whenever you build a computer, you generally need a case to put it into, unless of course you're reusing something that you already have. This is the Be Quiet Pure Base 500. It is a new design from them, and honestly, I like it in general, but not necessarily for this build. I used it because it's what I had available, and in terms of everything on the shelf, it's slotted in. But as you'll see in part 2 of this build video series, or if you watch the live stream of it, it wasn't my first choice. I would love to have their 700 series case. I think their 700 series would be ideal for this level of build. I don't have one, so I had to use this. In fact, that's why the cooler got changed midway through the process, because it just didn't quite fit right. Now, don't misunderstand me. The quality of Be Quiet's cases is wonderful. The panel material, the thickness of the metal, the quality of the mesh, the mounting points, the metal in the back, the mesh on the top, the interchangeable panel on the top, the power supply shroud. Everything's built really well. It's got the acoustic paneling inside to muffle the sounds. This is a very quiet build. I like this machine. It's a lot of computer for a $79 case. I would go up a notch or two. $100, maybe $120 is probably the right price point to spend on a case for a $2,000 build. 5-ish% of your total system price, so it's a little bit undercased. Nice, maybe more appropriate for a $1,500 build as opposed to this. Now that's just Be Quiet. There are so many other manufacturers that you could choose. The list is absolutely endless. Corsair, Cooler Master, Fractal Design, NZXT, Be Quiet, and others. And they all make sometimes dozens of cases, and it's a very personal choice. What I will say is that it may look like there's not enough airflow up here, but there is. I've already done all the benchmarking, I've already done the build, I've already tested this and run it. 5 gigahertz on all the cores and threads is not a problem in here. Temperatures are not an issue. You'll see that in part 3 when I do the game performance and non-game performance benchmarks for this. But it isn't a problem. There is enough airflow in here to make it work just fine. It's just maybe a little bit bigger would have been nice. Following along from the case, you need a power supply. I genuinely have to say I was pleasantly surprised with this power supply. It was easy to install, the cables were easy to work with, it's extremely quiet, it has a Silent Wings fan inside. If you don't know what the Silent Wings fans are, they're not cheap. They're like $20-ish a piece. They're worth every penny. My main production workstation downstairs has 5 of them in there, and it's absolutely worth it. It cut the noise level. Years later, I did those 2 years ago. They're still working great. No noise, no problems whatsoever. This is a 650 watt fully modular power supply. You can spend less. This is just over $100 at the moment. Prices vary all the time, naturally. You can spend $50, $60, $70 on a 600 watt or 700 watt, 80 plus bronze, non-modular power supply, and it will certainly do the job. But just like the case should be about 10% of the build price, I think the power supply should be as well. So about $100 for a $2,000 build is about the right place to be. You can keep that through multiple builds and multiple upgrades. This power supply should easily last you 10 to 12 years without any issue. You could go through 3 complete builds and upgrade processes without any problems. So spend a little bit extra and get a really nice power supply, and then you just never have to worry about it. No gaming PC would be complete without some storage to put your games on, and we have some very nice storage in this build. In fact, 25% of the entire budget of this computer is going to storage. So if you're sitting there going, how in the world is this computer $2,000? This is where part of it went. We have 4 terabytes of SSD space here. We have a 1 terabyte boot drive, and it is frankly the best. Samsung's 970 EVO Plus 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Yes, I know the Gen 4 drives are out. I'd take this over those any day of the week. It's just a superior drive all the way around. It's not cheap. $200. It's double the price of some of the cheap 1 terabyte NVMe SSD options. But if you want the best and you want something that's going to last you a very long time, well, you might want to consider going with the Samsung option. But 1 terabyte's not nearly enough for games these days. Call of Duty Modern Warfare looking at you, over 150 gigabytes. That's nuts. Where is all that storage going? So we have a 2 terabyte Intel 660p NVMe SSD installed in our second slot. I have reviewed this drive, I've covered it extensively, and it's ironically the exact same price at the moment as the 1 terabyte Samsung. If you're okay with slightly slower storage and the limitation of not being able to do full drive writes and amazing performance, you might consider just putting 2 660p's in and having 4 terabytes of NVMe and skipping the Samsung. Although I think if you're going Intel, you probably want your boot drive to be a little bit nicer and be a TLC drive instead of a QLC drive. But this provides us room to put games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which are somehow over 150 gigabytes. How did that happen? So you don't want just a 1 terabyte SSD. As a bonus, we have a third SSD in here. It is ADATA's SU800 1 terabyte SATA drive. And that's actually mounted here on the side in one of the 2.5-inch drive bays. You need a drive for maybe less played games, maybe personal files, your OneDrive or Dropbox or G Drive Sync, or anything else that you may be working on that gives you some additional storage. Now, I actually did build the computer with another SSD, but it's not in the budget because it gets a little bit silly at that point. There is a 2 terabyte Micron 1100 SATA SSD. Nobody should buy one. Those are a little bit slower, a little bit old at this point. I've had it for a couple of years. It used to be on one of my test benches until it got replaced with an Intel 660p 2 terabyte drive, but it's in there for personal use because this is actually going to be a personal machine. So I wanted the extra 2 terabytes of space. But I thought $500 of storage was sufficient for this build, so I left it off of the build list, even though you'll see it in the actual build video itself. One question some of you may ask is, well, what about hard drives? You can get an 8 terabyte hard drive for under $150, and that's much bigger than this for far less money. Have you used a hard drive lately? They're Have you played a game off hard drives lately? Yeah, you can, and yes, the frame rates are fine. But there's more to using a computer than frame rates. I mean, yes, you're buying an Intel system, you want amazing frame rates, but level load times, and especially in open world games, you get in a game where you're traversing a large amount of terrain, there'll be skips and stutters as the game is pulling data off of the hard drive. Games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare that are 157 gigabytes in size, it's not loading all that into RAM. I mean, at times it will, but anytime it has to go back to the drive, you're just suffering through relatively slow performance. So put all that on SSDs. If you need a hard drive, well, that's what external USB drives for backup are for. How much storage do you need? Scale it to your size. You've got M.2 slots, you've got 2.5-inch mounting drive bays, and even a couple of 3.5-inch drive trays down there. Spend more, get more when it comes to storage. An often overlooked item whenever you are building or budgeting a build on a PC are system fans. You can buy 120 millimeter case fans for $4 or $5 a piece or less in bulk. They are generally loud, they are generally cheaply made, and they generally don't last very long. These are none of those. The Silent Wings 3 or the Noctua fans are amazing quality. I have them in a variety of my machines. I've covered them numerous times before. They're not inexpensive. You will generally pay $20 plus per fan. You get what you pay for. If you've got a $2,000 budget, spend some of it on fans. I ended up, due to the fact that I didn't have enough spares on the shelf, putting both Noctua and Be Quiet fans in this case. There's a Silent Wings 3 exhaust fan in the back. There are two Noctua 140mm fans in the front. There really should have been three 120s, but I didn't have three 120s, so we put two 140s. You'll see that in the build video. They are quiet, they are wonderful at airflow, and they will last, I don't want to say forever, but effectively forever. If you've seen my previous builds, my Cadillac $2,000 build with my 8700K, and if you've seen my Skylake X build, for example, those have Noctua and Be Quiet fans in them respectively. They are so much nicer than the stock fans those cases come with. So spend some money on fans, get a better computer. All of those parts combined, give or take, is about $2,000, or at least it was when I initially planned this build. The change of the cooler and a few other things adjusted that downwards somewhat, and prices vary constantly. When you watch this video, these components will almost certainly cost some other number besides $2,000. And these are American-based prices. If you live somewhere else in the world, then prices are going to vary by region, and you may pick different components based upon that. This is a premium build designed for a premium experience. One of the first things I'm sure people are going to say is, what are you talking about? An i7-9700KF and an RTX 2070 Super? You can build a much less expensive computer than $2,000. You don't have to spend $2,000. You can get closer to $1,000 for that build. Maybe $1,200, maybe $1,400 to build you a really nice system. What is this $2,000 budget nonsense? I understand, but this is why I do these parts guides and spend so long talking about all these components. There's $500 of storage in this build. You may not want $500 of storage. That's fine. Custom PCs are custom, build it however you want. You may not want a $110 power supply. Maybe a $60 or $70 power supply is fine for your preference, or you'll spend less on a cooler or less on a case, or you'll change something else. There is $80 worth of fans in this case. Not cooler, fans. If you add up the Noctua and the Be Quiet aftermarket fans that I put in this case, that's like a whole nother cooler or another SSD. You could practically buy another terabyte of SSD space for just the cost of the fans. How nice do you want your build? How long do you want it to last with no maintenance required except maybe blowing some dust out? How quiet do you want your build to be? Do you just care about dollars to frames per second, or do you care about how nice your computer is? This is a nice build in a quality case with quality fans, with a quality motherboard, with a silent video card. I gotta give Gigabyte credit. These gaming cards with the triple fan cooler design, this thing is quiet as can be. It may not look as pretty with as much RGB as maybe some of the fancier cards out there. I do use some of these cards in my machines because they are legit very, very quiet. And of course, there's a lot of other very nice components in here. But it comes down to do you want cheap or do you want premium? That's a personal choice. But I think this is a very nice build, all things considered. It looks nice. It feels nice. It's a sweet gaming PC. Did you like this video and you want to see more? Be sure to be subscribed to our channel and hit the bell notification icon in order to be notified when part 2 and part 3 of this video series come out. Don't want to wait and want to see them right now? Not a problem. There's a link in the video description below to Floatplane. For $5 a month, you can subscribe to Floatplane and support the channel directly. You get to watch videos early. Part 2 and 3 will definitely be up there early for you to watch. No ads. So support the channel, no ads, early access, plus 50 exclusive videos that are not available to the general public, some behind the scenes, some stuff with our kids, and a couple of detailed build guides, which actually were never put onto YouTube, including the i7-9700K $3,000 Cadillac Platinum build. That was never published to YouTube, but that is over on Floatplane for those of you who want to see it. You can also support the channel by joining Patreon, link down in the video description below. There's a $2 and a $5 per month support option there and a variety of benefits there. You can hit the join button on YouTube, and you can also subscribe to us on Twitch, either myself or my wife. All of those, only one is required, give access to the Tech Deals Discord. We have a bunch of private chat channels. I'm very active over on the Discord. If you want any help putting together your system, if you want some buying advice, part selection advice, compatibility advice, consider joining the Tech Deals Discord. There's a link down in the bottom of the video description below. We have a great community of members providing all kinds of help, both in initial purchases as well as setting up. And I'd love to hear from you over there. Let me know what you ended up building or what you're upgrading to or what components you picked, what you liked. A lot of this stuff is very personal in nature, and so if you prefer one brand or another, provide your list down there and let us all know what you got. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you love it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below. Questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, suggestions, there's a huge comment section down there. I love hearing from you down there, and the YouTube bots love it for engagement. So be sure to leave a comment down there. And if you're not on the Tech Deals Discord, then by all means, post your system configuration down in the comment section below, either what you've already bought or what you're thinking of buying to get feedback from the community. There's links in the video description below, as I mentioned before, a bunch of affiliate links to Amazon, Newegg, and eBay. Using those supports the channel at no extra cost to you and is greatly appreciated. And of course, simply watching this video and sharing it and hitting that like button is support all on its own, and we do greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see all of you next time.